It is Sunday, December 6th, 2015. This is the Real in the Field Goals Instant Reaction Podcast, Part 2. We have already recorded one today, and if you go to fieldgoals.com, you can listen to me and Danny put our instant reactions together for the Seahawks 38-7 win over the Minnesota Vikings today. But there was a problem getting that audio downloaded from the YouTube video so that we couldn't upload it to SoundCloud, which is what we usually do for those of you that are subscribed to the podcast. And I didn't want to put anything. I wanted to put something out there that even though we were having technical issues there, let's get something out there. And instead, we're going to have a bonus episode. Filling in for Danny Kelly on the bonus episode is Mina Kimes of ESPN, the magazine. So, Mina, how are you feeling about the win today? Down that it's an instant reaction time with a few hours off.
Good. I'm kind of like the Tarvaris Jackson of the Field Goals podcast.
Where but you won't go for one. You'll connect.
That's sad. I feel good. I expected us to win. I think more than I did against the Steelers. You know, I listened to your podcast with Arif, and I think, Kenny, you were pretty confident going into that. I remember you were saying you thought the Vikings were kind of posers, and I agreed, especially when you went over, like the advanced statistics. As much as Arif tried to explain them away, it seemed pretty clear to me that we were better than the Vikings in almost all phases of the game. And I think that was borne out much more in rushing than I think anyone could have expected, though. Yeah,
I think that, I've had a decent track record this year. I said that the Bills were going to be good with Tyrod Taylor, and they're like 6-3 with Tyrod Taylor. I said the Steelers weren't going to be very good. Now that's sort of wishy-washy. They're not in the playoffs right now, but they had that.
They're pretty good. They're pretty good.
Yeah, they're good. They're good. I was mostly wrong about the Steelers. I've always been against Andrew Luck, and you see what has happened there. But me and you both said before the year, you asked me, I think, don't you think that the Packers are kind of overrated? And this is before the season, and I said yes. And look at where they are. They're one Hail Mary away from being tied with Seattle in the record department.
Unfortunately, that was a private conversation, not on a podcast. You'll have to just take our word that we both knew the Packers were gonna, be less good.
And this was after Jordy Nelson got injured too, so that was a big deal.
I also said in this private conversation that the Panthers were going to be undefeated, and Donald Trump was going to be a leading Republican contender. So, you know what, the Andrew Luck stuff. Whenever I see, not to transition too quickly into Real in the Film Goals, but whenever I see ads for The Big Short, I always think of a Big Short style film about you and Andrew Luck. The one guy who called it, and you're like, in your pajamas, and like, he knew all along, the blogger. Anyways,
No, that's true. I feel like I would definitely be the guy, that it is so true that, I'm working and making all these prognostications in, pajamas and stuff like that. But
and like Christian
they called me crazy.
They called you crazy, and you were right. But yeah, just to take it back to the cogent conversation. Yeah, I think I thought we would win. I was surprised by how much we dominated them. How about you?
Yeah, so like I was getting, that was the stream that I was going on. Yeah, like you said, I did not believe in the Vikings. I didn't believe in the Falcons when they were 5-0. So those were two teams that I was like, they're not that good. And I definitely was like afraid that the Seahawks, even being better than the Vikings, would just play sluggishly like they have for most of the season. So I didn't have a whole lot of confidence. I just sort of, it's interesting too. It's like you can be totally confident or totally just believe that you're going to lose a game, but then you can spend that feeling that way for the entire week. But then as soon as kickoff happens, like you start to see how the opposite could be true. And like you start to give in and be like, you can look in that first drive and feel like, I'm confident the Seahawks are better than the Vikings. And then they fumble it and you're like, well, anything is going to happen now. Like there is the door's wide open, and that as soon as the game starts going, anything is possible. The Patriots lost to the Eagles today. Like you can't really predict anything, but I'm not at all surprised to see the Seahawks, because I think even like last week when they beat the Steelers, my feeling was this is the type of win that could get them on the run that they had in 2012
Yeah.
when they were 6-5, and then they just started dominating everyone. And you look at their upcoming schedule against the Ravens, the Browns, and the Rams, and you're like, they could get a few more of these blowout wins and be first in DVOA again. Russell Wilson's numbers over the last 3 games: 66 of 86. That's a 76.6% completion percentage with 879 yards, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a passer rating of 146.6. Do you remember like how you felt about Wilson 3 games ago and how you feel about him today?
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said there.
Do you remember like your feelings about Russell Wilson prior to this run of the last 3 games where he's blown up his numbers, and like how has your opinion changed at all?
Yeah, so basically the Arizona game is kind of where you're taking us back to.
Right.
Which was his last really bad performance. I mean, he looked bad in that game, but it's so hard to disentangle Russell Wilson's performance from the performance of the line, I think. So I definitely, if you had asked me at that point in the season, I don't think I would have predicted that he would have been playing at the level he's playing at now, but how could anyone?
It's pretty insane how much he's turned his season around. After that Arizona game, 9 games into the season, he had a passer rating of 91.7, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He sits here today with a passer rating of 106.2 with 21 interceptions, which is more than he had last season, or 21 touchdowns, which is more than he had last season. He's on pace to just dominate and decimate every single career best that he's ever had, 8.5 yards per attempt. And they're doing it without Jimmy Graham. So what did you think about, I think it seems like they're really working in the other guys better now.
Yeah, I mean, they're all clicking. I think Jackson posted his passer ratings to each of the receivers, and they were all insane. I don't remember what they were, but they were, I mean, I know Tyler was like 140. The transition of the offense to Tyler Lockett's offense has been something to behold, and he's just playing out of his mind. You know, when I watch him, I think what's striking to me is not even so much his speed or athleticism, but he doesn't look like a rookie to me. Do you know what I mean? Like his decision-making ability, even the little things like how good he is at staying in bounds, he seems years older than he is.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of the things that we had felt in the preseason about Tyler Lockett and some of these other guys are starting to come through.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, God, at this point, if you had to grade our offseason, it would be A+.
Yeah, I mean, the Jimmy Graham thing didn't work out as planned, but I think it was still a good move.
Yeah, I mean, if he hadn't gotten injured, I think it would. But
Jimmy Graham, he tweeted out, laying here recovering, and all I can think about is my boys getting a W today. This team gives everything they have every play. Don't matter. So he still seems very much a Seahawk, you know?
That's very sweet. And obviously Doug is also just like out of control right now. I don't know. I mean, with Baldwin, do you feel like it's a like you were there all along type thing, where Russell's just elevated his play, or they're clicking, or what do you think's happening that's sort of creating this?
Yeah, I don't think that Doug Baldwin has necessarily gotten better or changed in any sort of way. I think he's still pretty much the same player that he always was, which is, you know, a very, very great slot receiver. You know, like he is very good at doing what he can do. He's never going to be he's never going to be Antonio Brown. He's not a number one. But that being said, you know, we've seen he's playing as good as any slot receiver at the NFL right now, and they're using him better. And I think he's just getting around. I think, I don't know, it's just different things. The changes that they've been forced to make due to injuries with Thomas Rawls and some of the other guys, Paul Richardson, and sort of moving things around have really seemed to benefit some of the guys that have been around here, like Baldwin and Kearse. Doug Baldwin, over his last 4 games, has 24 catches for 433 yards and 6 touchdowns. The Seahawks haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since 2007, haven't had a guy with 10 touchdowns since 2005, and it seems like Baldwin, over the next 4 games, could get close to that. Is he your favorite? Who's your favorite wide receiver?
It's got to be Lockett at this point. Do you think Lockett is the number one? Do you think he's a number one receiver? Do you think he has the potential to, I mean, I don't know about Antonio Brown, but, maybe like a T.Y. Hilton, or do you think he has that in him?
Yeah, those were the names that, people were throwing around as best case scenarios when he was drafted. I definitely think, 7 catches for 90 yards today. He seems to be getting more and more fitting in. He had the good kickoff return. He seems to be just doing everything out there on the field. I mean, it sounds crazy to think that you'd lose Jimmy Graham and the next week feel better about your offense than you ever had. And it seems like what's going, how do you feel about what side have you always sort of stood on with Darrell Bevell, and what side do you stand on now?
One thing I noticed in this game, and I guess in the last game to a degree, is I just feel a lot better about the rhythm of the offense, which is sort of the combination of run and pass. It seems like they're passing a lot on like kind of more intermediate passes on second down, and they're setting up short yardage situations. At least today, that's something I noticed. We had a lot of nice little easy pickups for first downs. I guess in the last game, we had a lot of third and longs, which we succeeded in converting. But something about the rhythm of the offense and the mixture of plays felt really good to me today. So I'm very feeling good about Bevell right now. How about you?
I've always, I think like one of the guys most recently that's been championing, is that how you say it?
Yeah, that is. That's right.
Bevell on Twitter a lot recently is Jackson Bevins, and I think that I stand with Jackson on that issue, which is, yeah, you look at the numbers, it's like everybody wants a traditional, not a traditional. Everybody wants the 5,000 yards passing with 40 touchdowns because they feel like that's the best offense possible. But the Seahawks, I'm sure dating back to 2011 or 2012 at least, are the number one rushing team in the NFL. I'm sure that, they put up plenty of points. It's like 24 points or whatever. If that's what they're putting up, that's enough to win with the defense when they're playing as well as they have over the last few, not last week, but after the way they played today, allowing no points to the Vikings offense, held them to 125 total yards, which is just ridiculous.
It's so crazy.
I think that, the way Frank Clark was playing, I mean, I got to ask Mina, because we talked about Frank Clark after the draft, or we at least, did we talk about Frank Clark? I know we talked about Greg Hardy.
We talked about Frank Clark.
About how would you root for the team or the player if you didn't think that they were good people? And I'm curious, and now that Frank Clark has had an amazing game, how did you feel?
I mean, I root for the defense. I'm not, it doesn't change what happened or how the team handled it, in my opinion, but I always root for the team. You know what I mean? I'm not, the games happen so fast. I'm not kind of working through, I think, a lot of feelings while everything happens, but yet, like, let's just say it. He played out of his mind today. I mean, Jordan Hill was out. No, Jordan Hill was in, and right? Or no, he was out. I mean,
he was out. You're one and only.
He's been, he's outplayed him at every turn. Cassius Marsh, did he get hurt? Because he looked good early on. I don't know. I saw he got hurt at the end. Anyway, so so we've got a few players stepping up in that position group, which is great, because in the last game we had a lot of trouble generating much of a pass rush on Ben. So it was good to see today, and important, I think.
Yeah, they did say that Cassius Marsh got down, but I think he got back up. But
okay, that's good. No injuries. Wow.
What I'm seeing on Twitter is that they were calling him Curtis Marsh at that point. But
I heard that. Yeah, it was weird.
They switched off the broadcast here in LA around the third quarter mark and went to the 49ers and Bears. So I didn't get to see all of the action live, unfortunately. But
really?
I am happy that, like you say, it was a game that finally called for T-Jack and B.J. Daniels to connect or try to connect at some point.
B.J. Daniels caught a pass.
He did. 6 yards.
Six hard-fought yards. It was actually interesting listening to the live broadcast, because a lot of plays, penalties really didn't go the Vikings' way. And there were a lot of bad calls that we benefited from, which is like a very unusual situation as a Seahawks fan this year. So that was kind of an interesting thing to experience, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, Frank Clark had a JJ Watt type performance today. There's 2 passes defense, 2 sacks, 3 QB hits. I mean, he was all over and he was unstoppable. And, if the Seahawks, they already have, this was what we were so excited for in the preseason, because they already have 2 Pro Bowl level defensive ends. Michael Bennett got a sack today. Cliff Averill has probably played the best of any defensive lineman on the teams this year. And then if you have Frank Clark also in there, and Bruce Irvin played well today, it's pretty ridiculous, if they're playing up to this level. And you look back now and you see that the Seahawks are 7-3 with Cam Chancellor, which is more of a record that you would think was indicative of their capabilities before the season started. Here they are, bounced back from 2-4 in the playoffs. If the season ended today, looking good for playoffs now that the Bucks beat the Falcons earlier today. Yeah. By the way, Russell Wilson, this is just how good he's been over the last 3 weeks. Russell Wilson led all passers in passer rating in week 11 with 138.5. Russell Wilson led all passers in week 12 in passer rating with a passer rating of hold on, let me pull it up again. With a pass rating of 147.9. And this week, Russell Wilson is second in passer rating. He had a passer rating of 146, which on almost any week would be the leading rating, but Andy Dalton had a 146.8. So he just narrowly missed out. But Russell Wilson with 3 games over 135 passer rating in the last 3 weeks, and that's the most of any player in the NFL for the whole season. So he's just on a tear right now. Can you guess what the Seahawks did for the first time in franchise history today?
Interesting. Just in this game or like a streak? Is it a streak thing?
It is a franchise thing. That's I can really the whole franchise today. They did something today, then it's the first time in franchise history that this is true.
Okay, because I know there's a few things, like it's the first time we've scored over 28 points in 3 consecutive games or something. That's not what you're
I haven't heard that. That's new to me.
I may have made that up. I don't know.
The Seahawks, for the first time in franchise history, have an all-time winning record. So their all-time record is over 500 finally.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it so they get to 7-5, and that pushes them over the hump. Do you feel over the next 3 weeks they face the Ravens? And me and Danny talked about this earlier in the other version of instant reaction, which is that Matt Schaub was hurt today for a moment. I don't know that it's serious, but he was hurt, which means that if he were to miss the game, the Seahawks would be facing Jimmy Clausen for the second time this season, but now with a different team.
Has that ever happened to a backup quarterback where they've had to face the same team twice?
I think it has. I feel like maybe it's happened to TJ Yates or something like that. Yeah, I think everything is every odd record that's ever happened has happened to TJ
Yates. Oh God, poor Jimmy Clausen. That's horrible.
So then in week 15, they would get Austin Davis or Johnny Manziel. And in week 16, they would get Case Keenum or Nick Foles. 3 teams that have the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. So they're 7-5 now. What kind of odds would you give the Seahawks to finish 11-5?
I think we run the table. I do. I look at that Arizona, because Arizona is our only really tough competitor remaining, right?
Yeah.
Look at that Arizona game. We almost beat them with an offensive line made of 5 like rotating whatever they were turnstiles, and Russell Wilson playing at half.
Do rotate, it turns out, as well. This is what I said in a tweet once, which is if you have a guy that's a turnstile, just turn him around. Then he becomes unstoppable because that's what turnstiles do.
I got to think of a better analogy for our offensive line.
They're just shitty. But
anyways, one thing about the offensive line today, they did play a lot better, but the penalties were obviously terrible. And they're so good at spreading them out. I mean, I guess Gary Gilliam had too. But whenever I'm like, oh, it's always a new guy. So, which is actually incredibly dispiriting because, I mean, it's harder to fix the whole penalty thing. They did have a ton today. But anyways, yeah, the Arizona game, I mean, look at that. We almost freaking beat them with a vastly inferior team. So playing at the level the team is playing at now, I really think they have a strong chance of beating them, especially if so I don't know.
would have to say that the Cardinals' loss hurts the most for obvious reasons. Is
Yeah.
there a team? I mean, in the division standings right now, if they had beaten the Cardinals, they would be 8-4. The Cardinals would be 9-3, and basically the Seahawks would still have their fate in their hands.
Right. That's so
Now
annoying.
they're 3 games back and they basically have to make up 2 games over the next 3 weeks, which doesn't seem too likely. Anything is possible. Is there a game as you look back on the 5 losses though that stings the most?
Probably the Panthers game, especially now because they've been so successful, and
Yeah.
I just felt like we were the better team for so much of that game.
Not that you like necessarily.
And the way we lost with the Greg
Yeah.
Olsen up the seam like that was just like,
Not that you necessarily get credit for, supposed to win games, but like the fact that the Seahawks should have really beaten the Bengals, who right now are the 1 seed in the AFC after the Patriots lost, and the fact that they should have beat the Panthers, who are the 1 seed in the NFC. There's not a team in the NFL that the Seahawks cannot beat. So if they get into the playoffs, which it looks very good now, there's no doubt that the Seahawks are going to be probably the last team anyone wants to face in the playoffs. If I was, say, the Green Bay Packers, I would much rather face the Cardinals or the Panthers, in my opinion, than the Seahawks.
Absolutely. It's like 2012 when we were putting up 50 burgers on, I think it was the Cardinals and the Bills maybe or something. And
it was 58-0 against the Cardinals and 50-13 against the Bills.
So yeah, the Cardinals and the Bills. And anyways, the Seahawks were like this buzzsaw, just like blasting through the NFL, and nobody wanted to play them. It feels like we're that team only with playoff experience and veterans. So feeling pretty good. I don't know.
Yeah, everything does seem good, and I'm excited, to see more of the growth of the guys like Tyler Lockett. Can Doug Baldwin, put up the best, especially now you look at the whole thing. Look at where we were a year ago in 2014 when Golden Tate was putting up all those numbers with the Lions.
Yeah,
and
I know.
I'm not looking at Golden Tate's numbers right now, but I'm guessing that Baldwin has more catches, yards, and touchdowns because I know he wasn't having a great season.
As a Golden Tate fantasy owner, that's definitely true. Sorry.
No, Doug Baldwin. Yeah, he's got more touchdowns he's got as many touchdowns this year as he's had in the last 2 seasons combined.
That's freaking bananas. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Wilson, he's at 21 touchdowns now. Can he get to 30 touchdowns? He needs 9 over the next 4 weeks. I mean, the fact that he's put up 11 in 3 weeks is so amazing. I don't know. It'd be too much to ask for, maybe to think of 9 more. But he's definitely playing out of his mind right now with his ability, the way he was elusive and getting around, and scored his first rushing touchdown of the season. I know that, now that Tom Brady's lost his 2nd game this week, and now Cam Newton, I think that Cam Newton is the worst MVP candidate that anyone could think of. No, it's not that bad. I'm over exaggerating. But Cam Newton, he threw 5 touchdowns. The Saints have given up 35 touchdowns.
I know. Against the Saints.
They're terrible. And I don't care that he did it. For the most part, Cam Newton is one of the most average quarterbacks. As a passer, he's a very dangerous runner, and he makes things harder, and he doesn't have a lot of receiving help. But to me, he's still not an MVP candidate. And the best MVP candidate on the Panthers, give me Luke Kuechly, give me Josh Norman.
Thomas Davis. Yeah, I think if Cam is the MVP, he's probably going to have the lowest DVOA or passer rating or anything of any QB who's won MVP ever. Would be my guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that speaking of DVOA, I think I might have mentioned it quickly earlier, but yeah, there's the Seahawks. They finished first in DVOA for 3 straight years. They're the only team to ever do that. They came in, a few weeks ago, they were with like 12th or 13th in DVOA. They come into this week 5th in DVOA. They were only a hair behind the Panthers, who I imagine are only going to get worse after narrowly, defeating the Saints. They were only narrowly behind the Chiefs, who, they were up 30. They won 34-20 over the Raiders, they were ranked 12th in DVOA. I think that the Seahawks have a very good chance of finishing first in DVOA again, which seems nuts.
I'm looking forward to it's now we're at last week I was waiting Tuesday, refresh. Yeah. It's so gratifying. And I saw Aaron Chass was on Twitter saying, well, the Seahawks have been high all along, which is obviously Seahawks fans love DVOA.
Right.
But yeah, I think we have a pretty good chance. I mean, the offense was 4, right? I think, or the offense was higher than the defense, and I could see the offense certainly rising after today's performance.
Yeah, people, and that's
And
the thing.
special teams too. Actually, special teams is the lowest, and with Tyler and those returns, it's got to go up.
Yeah, well, yeah, special teams coming in this week was ranked 4th. Defense was ranked 7th. So the defense pitching basically a shutout. That's got to be going up. I definitely, and that's the whole thing when people were talking about, you don't respect the Vikings at 8-3. You're not what your record says you are. The Chiefs were 3rd in DVOA, and then we can see why. They're 6-5. Right. The Seahawks were 6-5, but then you look at other teams that were 6-5 going into this week. The Colts are 20th in DVOA, the Texans 22nd, the Falcons 23rd, and those things bear out. If those teams play each other, you're probably gonna get what you get, which is not a surprise if the Seahawks or the Chiefs come out ahead on those games. So a very good win. But do you think that Russell Wilson is a viable MVP candidate at this point?
Like should be, or would be considered by?
Should be. Like your honest opinion.
Yeah, I don't, just because he's turned in such an incomplete season, even though he's turned it around so much. I don't know. MVPs, I mean,
there is as much as it feels like he's been inconsistent, the truth, I think he's just had a lot of really high. He's had some high highs, obviously, over these last 3 weeks where you're going to say, like, his numbers have bumped. But look at this. He's one of only 3 quarterbacks in the league this year to throw a touchdown every week. He's the only quarterback I'm going to guess that he's got the most passer rating over 90 games in the NFL this season, because he's got 9 of them. He's been over 90. He's only got 1 game, that game against the Cardinals, where he was under 80 for passer rating. I think that, he's had, in the fact that Marshawn Lynch was removed from the equation, that Jimmy Graham has now been removed, that they don't have like a superstar wide receiver like a lot of teams do have. I think there is a case to be made, but especially it'll be made only, I think, like you say, if the Seahawks win out. And if he continues to go on this run, it would be nice to see no more interceptions from him, and sort of finish the year with, a career high 27 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions, passer rating around 105, maybe a couple more rushing touchdowns. And then,
the discrepancy between his numbers and Cam would be incredibly stark at that point if that happens. And, people always talk about how Cam has no weapons, which is factually accurate. But Cam's line looks a lot better than shockingly, which I didn't predict at all. But based on the few games that I've watched, it's looked pretty decent. So he does have that going for him. And obviously the defense is just as good, arguably.
25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions after this week. But, just as much as Wilson has padded his stats over the last 3 weeks, against, I would say, better defenses. Obviously, Minnesota has out a few defensive players today that were key. But again, the Seahawks just as much. No Lynch, no Graham. But Cam Newton had 5 touchdowns 2 weeks ago against the Redskins defense. He's got 5 touchdowns this week against the Saints. So he's padded his stats a little bit here over the last few weeks, but I think he's much more inconsistent. Like I said, Russell Wilson has 1 game under a pass rating of 80. Cam Newton has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I still would, I think it's easy for us to sit as Seahawks fans and say that we're biased towards Russell Wilson. And if we were Panthers fans, I have no idea what we'd be thinking, but I feel like my argument wouldn't be as good. But, you watch the games. He did throw the touchdown, even if it was against the Saints, when he needed it. And, that was good. So was there any other passing thoughts you had there?
Passing? Oh, like specifically about passing or?
No. It's fine. Were there any other final instant reaction thoughts on the Seahawks win or anyone else's win in the NFL this week?
Oh, boy. I watched the Eagles-Patriots game. That was satisfying. Eagles potentially our playoff opponent if we get the 5 seed, which would be delightful.
Yeah, they need to get that 5 seed. Anybody is going to be. You're talking about going to Lambeau or possibly Lambeau, possibly Philadelphia or Washington or New York. Those teams are terrible. So
that would be a freebie. So I definitely want that to happen.
I mean, if you said before the season that the Seahawks road to the Super Bowl was Washington, Carolina, and Arizona, I mean, nobody's scared of that. I mean, at least from a Seattle standpoint. I mean, it's not like ideal compared to being the number 1 seed, but they've won in Arizona the last 2 times they've played there. They've won in Carolina the last 3 or 4 times they've played there.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an easy road or anything, of course, but wild card teams do win Super Bowls plenty often. So,
Yeah.
what are those standings saying there for the Eagles in the NFC East?
I think the Eagles are now tied with the Giants. Is that right?
So we've got the Redskins at 5-6, the Eagles at 5-7, the Giants at 5-7,
Yeah.
and the Cowboys at 3-8. They're not technically out of it either.
Yeah, I mean that. Good luck with the NFC East at this point, right? I think I don't think either of those 3 teams is more than 5% better than each other. So
no, definitely not. And the Cowboys play the Redskins tomorrow night. So let's say that the Cowboys beat the Redskins, then you'll have 3 teams tied for first at 5-7, and the Cowboys 1 game out at 4-8 with 4 games left to play. And yeah, I would be interested. They could be a 6-10 team this year. That would be interesting.
Yeah, God, can you imagine going back to FedEx? And although I hope they clean up their turf, I think that's the one where it was Chris Clemens who tore his ACL on the turf there, which ended up being a huge issue. We didn't have a pass rush against Atlanta.
Yeah,
you hold on to the bitterness about these things.
Yeah,
but anyways, yeah, it'd be nice to go in there and just take care of business.
Yeah, it would. Anything that they can do, the Seahawks, I think it's pretty obvious if they go 11-5, they're not going to get the 6th seed. They're going to get the 5 seed. They're, whatever team gets the 6th seed, if it's going to be like, say, so the Vikings and the Packers are both 8-4. They have to play each other. So one of those teams is going to get 5 losses. If it's the Packers, then there could be, if the Packers manage to somehow go 11-5 and the Vikings somehow win the division, I guess that's the only possible way that it could happen.
Right, because the head-to-head.
Yeah, but other than that,
does that mean we're rooting for the Packers on the way out, or no?
I think we are, but at the same time, I mean, ideally, I think you would say that you want the Vikings, just because I think you'd rather play in Minnesota than play in Green Bay.
Right.
If that were to come down to it. But
well, we would want the Vikings to win and the Packers to, I don't know.
So let's say that the Vikings go 12-4 or whatever. That's fine. I don't care what they do at this point, unless if the Vikings went 12-4 and the Packers went 10-6 and the Seahawks went 11-5. I guess that would probably be ideal, maybe. But yeah. Either way, it's probably not going to matter. I assume that whatever happens, if the Seahawks win out, they'll get the 5 seed. They'll go play in the worst playoff team this season. And then they'll go off to, I guess, since they'll be the lower seed, they'd probably be headed to Carolina in the next round.
I don't care. Bring it. Like, I don't think the home field advantage matters as much to Russell Wilson as it did during his first year. Clearly, that's borne out. And at the rate that this team is playing at right now, I'm not scared of any NFC team.
Yeah, I'm not either. I think the Seahawks, I wrote about it for Sports on Earth, so go check that out. I wrote about the Seahawks win. I'm writing another one for Rolling Stone that will be on rollingstone.com on Monday about the Seahawks and them sort of getting back to form. Obviously, there's stuff on field goals about it. And as previously noted, Russell Wilson has 9 of those passer rating over 90 games. The only one with more is Tom Brady. He had 10 going into today. And then Andy Dalton has 9 as well. Carson Palmer, I think he got his 9th today. So there it is. I mean, it's so crazy that right now it seems like the best 4 quarterbacks in the NFL are Brady, Dalton, Palmer, and Wilson, which is kind of weird. Rodgers falling off a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, yeah, right. So funny, Newton, God, the Cam thing. He's going to be your new Luck, isn't he? I can already...
I mean, now that Luck is in the background.
This is going to be your new thing.
This is not, now that Luck has sort of faded away this season, I have to push on someone else. And since everyone else is pushing for Cam Newton, I have to be the one to sort of feel like I'm going to be the barometer that helps it not swing too far to the left so that people can understand that, he's not that good. Speaking of Andrew Luck. As we record this, Matt Hasselbeck has one of 5 with 2 interceptions.
Oh no! Oh no! Wait. Oh, they're on it's the Steelers. I picked the Steelers to win this. That's too bad, though.
So the Steelers up 6-3. Is your fantasy team? I would never normally ask a person about their fantasy team because it's terrible.
My fantasy teams are both awful. I have nothing to. I don't think I have players on either of these teams.
Biggest mistake?
But I just root for Matt, don't you?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good story. I don't necessarily root for or against the Colts when Andrew Luck is out. I don't want to say that I root against them when Andrew Luck is in. I just feel so nice to be right. That's the whole thing. That's the only reason that I'm doing it, because it doesn't matter to the Seahawks whatsoever if the Colts win or lose.
ESPN's really been hammering home that Kyra, or it's like a graphic that's like Andrew Luck 0 and like 4, whatever. Like Matt Hasselbeck 4-0. Like, and every time he wins, they update it. They've been really liking that one.
Yeah, but I think Matt Hasselbeck is a beautiful man and a beautiful soul, and I root for him to do well because, I mean, he's out there winning games and still rooting for Andrew Luck to come back and take his thing because, I mean, Matt Hasselbeck is 40. If he can do this for 5 more years and collect, $3-4 million every year for just hanging around a football team and having fun with his buddies, like, what's a better life than that? It's like being a kicker, but you're respected.
It's crazy, though, how good he's been at his age. I mean, he's not phenomenal, but you look at how crappy all of the backups are in the NFL, and it really is astounding.
Yeah, he's one of the best backups in the NFL. I mean, look at Peyton Manning. He's older than Peyton Manning. Yeah. And I realize that Manning has put more miles on himself, but
he looks better than him, man. Matt Hasselbeck is playing better than Peyton Manning right now.
Oh, by 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning is the worst quarterback in the league this year. It'll be interesting to see what the Broncos do if Manning is healthy again, because right now they control their own destiny to get the number 1 seed in the AFC because they play the Bengals in week 16, I think. So
it'll be interesting to see what we do when Marshawn Lynch is healthy as well.
Well, what would you do?
I'd run them both, use them situationally. I mean, what a glorious problem to have. But you got to use Marshawn Lynch in the playoffs, in my opinion.
I was disappointed when Thomas Rawls had such a good beginning to his career, and then Lynch came back. They took him out of the thing again. Like, they didn't play him hardly ever. So I was really disappointed to see that when it happened. So I just, obviously now that, Thomas Rawls is having a phenomenal season, one of the best seasons in the league. The 2 leaders in yards per carry this year are Thomas Rawls and Russell Wilson. And I'm blown away by how amazing he is. And when you watch, like, say, the Denver Broncos in 1998 and they throw in a Terrell Davis and he rushes for 2,000 yards, and then Davis gets hurt and they throw in all the names are now Mike Anderson, and then he runs for 1,000 yards. Olandis Gary, he runs for 1,000 yards. And you say, oh, it's a system. And people would say that about Thomas Rawls. If you looked just at the numbers, you'd say it's a system. But Thomas Rawls is doing a lot of this work on his own. He is shifty. For sure. Got great vision. He's hard to tackle. He spins around. That touchdown today was just
the touchdown was phenomenal. Yeah, the run blocking has been great though for him. I will say, especially today, I thought it looked really good.
Yeah, they're doing a good job, no doubt. But yeah, he's also doing a lot of the work. So I think that I would just sort of tell Marshawn Lynch to take his time, and I don't know, like you can't. You have to make sure that they are both. I mean, even in the passing game, Thomas Rawls has looked solid. He's got good hands. He's not dropping easy passes, and it's exciting. And yeah, it's a good problem to have. It certainly makes them a more dangerous offensive threat in the playoffs than people may have expected them to be. So everything is hunky dory in Seattle Seahawks land, and we look to hopefully get that going. Do you have any other thoughts for Real in the Film Goals?
Real in the Film Goals, yeah. I see a lot of movies lately. I saw Creed, which I thought was good, although not as good as Mad Max, as some people have said to me.
Oh, hell no. I mean,
people have said that to me. Did you like it? I thought it was good. It was like a B+.
So, like, Creed has like a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, and I know exactly why it does, because there's nothing really to hate about it. There's no reason to say you don't like it. Everybody's like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but it
Yeah,
wasn't a revelation. Like Mad Max was a revelation for
right.
me.
Mad Max is an experience. Like you go home and
Yeah.
you tell your friends about it. You tell your family at
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. If they haven't seen it, you call them idiots. You get them the Blu-ray for Christmas so that they can feel it themselves. Like Mad Max is an experience. It's definitely in my top 5 movies of the year. Creed was just, the thing with boxing movies. I saw, like Southpaw earlier this year. Why do they have to come out with 5 boxing movies every
I
year?
don't
Like we
know.
get it. Nobody even watches boxing like anymore. Why do we
Yeah,
keep doing this?
boxing movies are more popular than boxing stuff. It's funny. And why aren't there more football movies?
There aren't any football movies. I mean, you could tell me like a
Question's
bunch of
coming
stuff
up.
about Ronda Rousey, but did you know that like Vladimir Klitschko was like the #1 boxer in the world and he lost this year for like the first time in 10 years? No, you didn't know that because nobody knows that.
I did know that.
Okay.
But Tyson Fury, who then went on to say that the best place for a woman, because he was asked about women fighters, was in the
Uh,
kitchen or on their backs.
right. I did
So
hear that one as well.
he is quite the villain. But I also saw the final Hunger Games, which definitely did not need to be its own movie.
Yeah.
All of my review in a nutshell.
I haven't seen that because I haven't read Mockingjay yet, and everyone is telling me not to bother.
It's
So
not
it's like,
good. It's not good. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I feel like you get everything in Hunger Games 1. You get
Yeah.
everything right there.
Hunger Games 1, the book is definitely the best book for sure.
Yeah, it was nice. I feel like there was a time, I'm not a big voracious reader. You seem like you've probably read a good number of books. And I would say, isn't it seem like for the most of human history, you would write a book and you'd say, great, I wrote a book and this is going to exist as its book. And now when someone writes a book, they send it to a publisher and they go, okay, great, but how does this go on for
Yeah.
5 more books? You know?
Yeah. They like sure things
Yeah, you want it to be
in
a franchise,
movies.
and that's the whole thing is that they
Yeah.
took the Mockingjay and they're like, well, we need to make this 2 movies, and it's like you really didn't have enough content probably for 1 movie. You
Yeah.
just
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And the casting is really bad. I mean, the guys are.
What happened with Philip Seymour Hoffman's role in that movie?
I read that they CGI'd him, which is crazy. And you can tell the way they wrote it, there was some kind of right arounds aspects.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw like a behind the scenes thing or something like that of all of the scenes in Furious 7 that had been replaced with Paul Walker's like
Oh,
brother.
God.
And it
That's
was pretty
weird.
insane. Like some of the stuff you
That's
could not
weird.
tell at all that it was his brother with Paul Walker's face transposed over it.
I don't know about that.
Super weird. But yeah, I saw Creed, and like I said, I feel like it's okay. It's good. It's
Good. Yeah.
got some good stuff in there. Michael B. Jordan is a star for sure.
Stallone is great in it, too. I mean, much better than I thought he would be.
Stallone, yeah, I think that he might get nominated for an Academy Award, believe it or not.
Yeah, I felt a lot of emotions during his scenes. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, and they already told you in the trailer that he'd get sick or whatever. Rocky's sick. Like you knew he was getting sick, but even when it happened, you were like, "Oh man, I'm actually feeling it. Stallone is giving me
Yeah,
something."
I felt, and the director Ryan Coogler really likes those tight shots, and he got in on his face, and
Yeah,
he's a crazy looking guy. It was okay movie. I still want to see. What do I want to see? Spotlight. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it.
I've heard that's great.
I don't know what to think, only because I listened to the Bret Easton Ellis podcast.
Okay,
Uh, are you a fan of Bret Easton Ellis at all?
not a huge fan.
But I think that I don't necessarily agree with him, and I think he's kind of a douche. But I do think he's probably the best film reviewer around today.
Okay.
Very obsessed with, and it's basically a film review podcast. And he said Spotlight, it's just sort of, it's placating to it's award season, so it's
Yeah.
like there's not a lot of substance, and it's just placating to like that kind of thing where it's like, oh, this is a movie about a child molestation ring, and so we're going to sensationalize that for the fact that we know that that's the type of stuff that the Oscars like, and people will feel guilty if they give it a bad review.
Well,
That kind of
it did really happen. It's based on.
No, yeah, for sure. It's a real true story, but I think he would. I'm trying to remember, but even I think he says the best movie of the year is Inside Out. Still,
I didn't see Inside Out.
I saw it finally, and it is incredibly well done.
Is that 3D? I don't see 3D movies.
I don't know. It may have come out in 3D, but it's a Pixar movie, so
Okay. It's available in 2 dimensions.
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, the third dimension is the heart of, the little girl that you go through. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I think Creed I saw last Tuesday, so I haven't seen anything else. What
Uh,
I'll see this week is probably Krampus. I don't know.
Krampus. I saw the trailer for Krampus, and I thought at least 50% of the trailer. I wasn't sure if it was a comedy or a horror film.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
found it very confusing.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it is a horror movie with
it's
comedic elements.
definitely a yeah right. I don't think I'll be seeing Krampus.
Someone called me out because I talked about Krampus a couple weeks ago, so I should say I said Kevin Smith directed it. Someone called me out and said no, that Kevin Smith did not direct Krampus, that it was Michael Dougherty. So I got Krampus confused with something else.
You got called out.
Yeah, because that was my bad. It seems
You
like a Kevin
got owned.
Smith movie.
Yeah.
Macbeth came out this week. Are you a big Shakespeare person?
There's a Macbeth movie? I had no idea. Who's in it?
Macbeth starring I'm pretty sure I know the name. Michael Fassbender as Macbeth.
Oh wow, that sounds good. I like him a lot. I would see
Yeah,
that.
Michael Fassbender, Marion Cotillard are going to be your two.
Wow. Sounds very classy.
83% on Rotten Tomatoes. So sounds like you're gonna go in a good way with that one. And then I'm interested next week in The Heart of the Sea. The whale movie comes out, and The Big
Oh,
Short.
the Moby Dick thing?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's with that guy, the brother guy.
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, what is that guy? He's so forgettable, and he can't carry that movie.
Chris Hemsworth. You're not a fan.
He's like a Ken doll. I don't know, no offense, Ken.
What about Liam Hemsworth? He was in the Hunger Games.
Yeah, he's equal. He looks like he should be in, One Direction or something. He's not memorable. But then the other guy, her alternative in the movie, is like 3 feet tall, and he looks like 10 years younger than her. The whole time, she's so obviously not into either of them, which may have been a deliberate directorial choice, but it's very like demoralizing as a viewer because you're like, really, you could do better than both these guys.
Who were you pulling for
No.
when you were reading book one?
Oh, the book? Because in my head, I wasn't imagining like those kind of, gosh, I'm trying to think back to book one because,
there wasn't a lot of mention of Gale in book one, obviously.
Yeah.
Who's more of a book two guy, but you still knew that she really loved Gale and didn't really. Here's the other thing: why do they have such stupid names? What's the other guy's name?
PETA. Like
PETA. Jesus Christ.
Like the coffee, Pete.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know.
PETA and Katniss. I mean,
obviously, there are a lot of problems with those books.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, but then like you said earlier, The Big Short comes out next week. I'm really interested to see how Adam McKay does a dramatic movie.
Yeah, have you read that book?
No, I haven't read many.
It's good. I mean, that was kind of like I was sort of living that because I was a financial journalist when all of that was going down in 2008, 2007.
Oh wow!
And I worked in a Fortune magazine right across from Lehman Brothers. And one of my first. This, by the way, podcast just really took a tangent, but one of my first.
We said we were going to make it quick, and now we're talking about the financial crisis. But go on.
One of my first assignments was just chasing people down outside Lehman Brothers, trying to figure out what was going on in there and asking them, invasive questions as they were about to go down. So it was kind of crazy. So, anyways, it's a period of history that I'm pretty familiar with.
That's pretty interesting. I'm assuming that you're going to have pretty high hopes for the accuracy of this film.
Yeah. And now I go back to reading about football.
Yeah, I should say this. I did see a movie this weekend. I went to go see The Room. Do you know about The Room?
Oh yeah, I know the story behind it, but I haven't seen the movie. Is it good?
Oh my God, you got to see the movie. So
really,
me and my friend were really into bad movies for a long time. So then I read about The Room in a magazine, like in 2009, just as I had moved down to LA. And we were the one selling point that was like automatically like, we have to see this immediately was there's a scene where a character's mother tells her daughter, no, I just got back from the doctor and I definitely have breast cancer. So she tells her daughter that she has breast cancer. And then the daughter says, "Oh, you'll be fine." And then immediately never mentions the breast cancer once again, ever in the movie or anything like that. It's just a throwaway line that she says she has
Weird.
breast cancer. So we searched high and low like that. We spent the next 4 hours finding out where we could get this movie. And we eventually went to it when we went down to downtown LA, purchased a copy from Amoeba Records, watched it like immediately, like 3 times in a row because it was so satisfying.
The girl's supposed to, Brie Larson, right, is her name? She's supposed to be really good in it.
No, you're thinking of Room.
What are you?
I'm talking about The Room.
That's like that legendarily bad movie.
Yeah.
It's like a cult classic, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
I do want to see Room, coincidentally. But no, I went and saw The Room.
Yeah, that's like a legendarily terrible film.
Right. The worst movie ever made.
Yeah,
so me and my friend watched it like 25 times probably. That's how many times I've seen The Room. But they do midnight screenings every month.
Yeah.
So one of the actors in the movie, Greg Sestero, wrote a book a couple years ago called The Disaster Artist. And that's actually a book that I have read. And so basically the James Franco bought the rights to the book, and James Franco is making a movie about the making of The Room with himself and his brother and Seth Rogen. And so I went to this screening because it was being held by James Franco because they were shooting parts of the movie that they're making for The Disaster Artist. They went around, so we're standing in line, and James Franco and a camera crew are basically coming down the line and like talking to Room super fans. I'm not the type to speak up and shout out and make myself, so I didn't get that part of it. But I did later on because I was sitting in an aisle seat, and James Franco was sitting in the back. And then Tommy Wiseau, who's the star and the director and everything, called James Franco down. And as James Franco was walking down, I did put my hand out for the first high five. And I did get a high five from James Franco.
Wow.
So that was exciting. So for any Room super fans out there, I did touch James Franco and Tommy Wiseau. So there you go.
Seems like a good place to end.
Yeah, I will say this. Number one, Mina, you and your husband watch The Room together. It's a great experience, and I think it'll bring you closer together than you've ever been before. And then if you ever get a chance to go to a screening, it's probably was the whole audience interacts with the movie. So it was probably the most fun I've ever had at a movie ever.
Really?
Yeah. Very interesting stuff. So that is the end of Reel in the Film goals. We are now back in Reel in the Field goals. This was the number 2 instant reaction podcast with Mina Kimes filling in for Danny Kelly. It ended up going about twice as long as the original, but I think we got a lot of good info in here. So 7 and 5, Mina, send us out.
7 and 5 feels good.
Perfect.